which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Julian Wong, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Saturday/Sunday, May 9th to 10th, 2026 issues of the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Broad U.S. hiring tops forecasts. Employers in April added 115,000 jobs as health, leisure, and retail drove gains. The U.S. job market blew past expectations again in April, buoyed by gains across industries including retail, transportation, and warehousing, and healthcare. The American economy added 115,000 jobs in April, the Labor Department said Friday, far exceeding expectations, and a sign that the labor market remained resilient so far in the face of the Iran war. The monthly increase was down from a net gain of 185,000 in March, but it was much better than the 55,000 jobs that analysts polled by the Wall Street Journal had expected to see for April. The unemployment rate stayed unchanged at 4.3%, as economists had expected. The April report, coming after strong jobs gains in March, shows how the labor market is holding up better this year than last. While healthcare is still leading the way in job gains, other sectors appear to be picking up. Businesses are seeing conditions stabilizing, and they have weathered the tariffs, so many are hiring, said Gus Foucher, chief economist at PNC. It's looking somewhat better than it did last year. In the first 4 months of the year, monthly payrolls have averaged 76,000, up from an average of about 42,000 during the same period last year. Still, the United States has shed jobs in 2 of the past 6 months, and many companies are reluctant to bring on new workers en masse. Companies grappling with changes in everything, from trade to immigration and tax policy, have for the most part held off on large-scale hiring and firing. It's still a high-anxiety job market, said Diane Swank, chief economist at KPMG. Those who have a job are clearly clinging on, while those looking for a job are feeling frozen out. The better-than-expected jobs report helped lift stock prices to new highs. The Nasdaq Composite Index finished 1.7% higher, giving the tech-heavy benchmark its 11th record close of 2026. The S&P 500, up 0.8%, also closed at a record. Both indexes notched their 6th straight weekly gain. The Dow Jones Industrial Average edged higher by 12 points. For the Federal Reserve, Friday's report should put the focus squarely on inflation data when it comes to determining whether it goes from here on interest rates. 4 months ago, a big question for the Fed was whether it needed to keep cutting rates to support what appeared to be a shaky labor market. That question is gone. While the labor market is steadied, inflation is now drifting up instead of down due to the effects of President Trump's tariffs and the Iran war, which has sent gasoline prices soaring. With the labor market giving the Fed cover to maintain its pause on rates, the next move on the policy debate is when and how to tilt toward a neutral bias that suggests a rate increase could be as likely as a rate cut. The answer could turn almost entirely on the inflation numbers. The Labor Department will report the latest data on the Consumer Price Index next week. Employers added jobs in a range of sectors. Healthcare and social assistance, which has been powering the overall job market, added 54,000 jobs. Retail added 22,000 jobs with the help of higher employment in warehouse clubs and supercenters. Department stores lost jobs. Transportation and warehousing employment increased by 30,000 in April, but was down since reaching a peak in February 2025. Federal government payrolls were down 9,000 in April. They are now down by nearly 12%, or 348,000 jobs, since a recent peak in October of 2024. Large-scale layoffs due to artificial intelligence have yet to happen, but businesses that are beginning to invest in AI may also be reluctant to hire a lot more workers until that technology's impact on workflow and productivity becomes more clear. The information sector lost 13,000 jobs in April, though it is still too early to say exactly how AI is impacting these numbers. Some businesses are citing AI when slashing workers. Others say that AI is simply making their employees more productive. Employment in information, which includes telecommunications, publishing, and data processing, is now down 11%, or 342,000 jobs since its most recent peak in November of 2022. A key measure of underemployment also rose. Aside, more people are taking on part-time roles because they can't find a full-time job. The U6 rate, which includes people working part-time who would prefer a full-time job and people who are so discouraged they have stopped looking for work, rose to 8.2% in April from 8% in March. It is at the highest level since December and more than a percentage point above where it was just before the pandemic. Closely watched by the Fed, U6 suggests many Americans are struggling with underemployment. The number of people working part-time who would have preferred full-time employment increased by 445,000 to 4.9 million in April, the Labor Department said. The full effects of the conflict with Iran and resulting higher energy prices have yet to play out in the labor market. Companies tend to make hiring plans months in advance, meaning any shifts in demand filter through with a lag. Higher fuel prices, which have already been more difficult for lower-income families, could curtail spending on travel and services, which in turn weighs on hiring in sectors such as retail and leisure. The price surge has been especially hard on airlines. Higher costs stemming from the war would also eat into wage gains in the coming months, another reason why some economists were cautious about Friday's positive job report. Apple, Intel set chip-making deal. Apple and Intel have reached a preliminary agreement for Intel to manufacture some of the chips that power Apple devices, according to people familiar with the matter. Intensive talks between the two companies have been going on for more than a year, and the two sides hammered out a formal deal in recent months, these people said. Bloomberg News previously reported the talks. It is still unclear which Apple products Intel would make chips for, these people said. Apple ships more than 200 million iPhones a year, as well as millions of iPads and Mac computers. Representatives for Apple and Intel declined to comment. Intel has two main business lines, designing chips and manufacturing them, both its own designs and external customers in its Intel Foundry unit. Both businesses had been underperforming for years before Lip Bhutan took over as chief executive last spring, vowing to revitalize them. The Trump administration last summer struck a deal to convert nearly $9 billion in federal grants into Intel stock, giving the U.S. government a 10% stake in the chip maker. It also played a key role in bringing Apple over to the table. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has met repeatedly over the past year with high-ranking Apple officials, including Chief Executive Tim Cook, as well as SpaceX Chief Elon Musk, and NVIDIA chief executive Jensen Huang to try to convince them to get into business with Intel, some of the people familiar with the matter said. With the Apple deal, Intel has now signed partnerships with all three. Over the past decade, Intel fell badly behind rivals such as Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company and Samsung Electronics after a series of technical missteps, leadership changes, and failed attempts at consolidation led outside foundry customers to pull or curb their business. When Intel hired Tan in March of 2025 to succeed ousted chief executive Pat Gelsinger, President Trump raised concerns that Tan's close ties with China would compromise him and call for his ouster. But Tan won Trump over with a charm offensive, and the government announced its 10% investment in Intel shortly after. Following the investment, Intel's share price rose sharply. On Friday, it closed up 14% at $124.92 per share. Tan has been reshaping Intel's top leadership ranks in recent months as well, including hiring former Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing executive Wei Jianluo, a move that prompted a lawsuit from TSMC. The Intel CEO also ousted his head of product and hired new executives to lead the company's data center processor and client computing units, as well as a newly formed custom silicon business. He has also invested heavily in Intel's most advanced manufacturing process, known as 14A. Trump personally advocated for Intel to cook in a meeting at the White House, according to people familiar with the matter. "I like Intel," Trump said in January. He said the government had made tens of billions of dollars from the Intel deal, and that the government's backing of the company had attracted important partners to Intel. "As soon as we went in, Apple went in, NVIDIA went in, a lot of smart people went in," Trump said. NVIDIA, the world's largest chips firm, invested $5 billion in Intel in September, and the two companies announced a partnership under which Intel would build custom data centers CPUs, the processing brains of most computer systems for NVIDIA. And last month, Musk and Intel announced an ambitious plan to build a chip manufacturing plant in Texas as part of Musk's Terafab project to produce chips for Tesla, xAI, and SpaceX. Apple relies on TSMC to make the chips it designs for iPhones, iPads, Macs, and other devices, and is under pressure to find additional chip suppliers. On Apple's past two earnings conference calls, Cook has blamed a lack of availability of advanced chips for Apple's inability to meet customer demand for iPhones. The constraints are expected to continue into the current quarter, affecting several Mac models, Cook said. "We think, looking forward, that the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio may take several months to reach supply-demand balance," Cook said. Last Friday, the day after their earnings call, Apple raised the Mac Mini's starting price. TSMC's manufacturing capabilities far surpass those of Samsung and Intel. Makers of other kinds of chips for memory and storage, for example, are more competitive with one another, giving Apple multiple sources of supply. Apple has long been TSMC's top customer, but skyrocketing demand for its manufacturing capacity from NVIDIA and other designers of AI chips means that Apple no longer has as much leverage to secure the supplies it needs. Starting in 2006, Apple used Intel-designed CPUs as the main processors for its personal computers, but switched to its own custom CPUs based on a design architecture from ARM Holding in 2020. Asked during a February interview if Apple was working toward having Intel make its chips, Apple's global head of procurement, David Tom, said, "We talk to Intel all the time." He declined to offer specifics of the discussions. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Virginia's electoral map plan thwarted. Virginia's highest court threw out Democrats' effort to draw more blue-leaning seats ahead of the midterm elections, capping a series of developments favoring Republicans as they try to hang on to their narrow majority in the House this fall. In a 4-3 decision Friday, the Virginia Supreme Court found the legislative process used to advance the new map violated the state's constitution, which incurably taints the resulting referendum vote and nullifies its legal efficacy. The new map had been recently approved by state voters after a campaign with tens of millions of dollars of advertising deployed on each side. The ruling blocked Democrats' push to add as many as 4 Democratic-leaning seats in Virginia, which is now represented by 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. The current map will be left in place for 2026 midterms rather than the 10-to-1 edge Democrats sought. Democratic-led states have been trying to counteract Republicans' rare mid-decade redistricting that President Trump kicked off by pushing Texas officials to redraw that state's map to make it more GOP-friendly. Democratic voters in California more or less countered that map, and the parties were thought to be neck and neck in the fight just last month, as Virginia's map was considered to neutralize Republican redistricting gains in Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio. The Friday decision comes after a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that placed new curbs on the use of race in constructing congressional districts. That ruling triggered efforts from Republican lawmakers in Louisiana. The subject of that litigation, as well as other southern states, such as Alabama and Tennessee, to take additional steps to redraw districts currently held by Democrats. Florida lawmakers also have approved a map that could create as many as 4 Republican-leaning congressional seats there, though that map is also being litigated under state law. Republicans hold a 218 to 212 majority in the House, and party leaders from President Trump on down hailed the news Friday. Huge win for the Republican Party and America in Virginia. The Virginia Supreme Court has just struck down the Democrats' horrible gerrymander. Trump wrote in a post in Truth Social after the decision was issued. Democrats decried the decision. Last month, millions of Virginians cast their ballots and stood up against the Republican power grab. Today, 4 unelected judges decided to cast aside the will of the voters, said Representative Suzanne DelBene, Democrat from Washington, chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Virginia's Democratic governor, Abigail Spanberger, elected last year, said Friday that Virginia voters had made their voices heard, and that she was disappointed in the court's ruling, but didn't indicate whether she planned any further legal steps. Political analysts said Republicans now have a lead in the redistricting campaign, with net gains of as many as 6 or 7 favorable seats, but that Democrats continue to have a good chance of taking control of the House in the race overall. Structurally, Republicans are in a better position, now said Aaron Covey, who covers House races for the Cook Political Report. But, she said, the political environment still definitely favors Democrats based on all the traditional metrics we look at. She said those metrics include Trump's negative approval ratings and the effect of the Iran conflict, as well as greater enthusiasm among voters for a party out of power to turn out in the midterms. In Virginia, Democrats still have a shot at pickups, including in contests to unseat Republican representatives Jen Kiggans in the Hampton Roads area in the state's southeast and Rob Whitman in the central eastern part of the state. Both GOP lawmakers had faced long odds to remain in Congress if the redrawn map stood, but still face competitive races. Much of the Virginia Supreme Court's majority decision and the three judges' dissent turned on the significance of early voting and the meaning of Election Day, an issue that has been regularly contested ahead of these midterms. The state constitution requires that the legislature approve a proposed amendment twice, once before and once after an election of state lawmakers. Democrats approved the map the first time less than a week before the 2025 election. The court's majority ruled that vote didn't qualify as occurring before the election since early voting had already begun. Backers, including Spanberger and former President Barack Obama, said the temporary gerrymandering throughout the next census was needed to counter similar GOP efforts. Opponents said the proposal undermined Virginia's past efforts at fair representation and would disenfranchise rural voters. The measure was narrowly approved, with 51.7% in favor and 48.3% against. Alex Kina, associate professor of political science at Virginia Commonwealth University, who opposed the redraw, called the episode a blunder for Democrats by disrupting primary campaigns for challengers. Put together with the GOP's recent moves in other states, all of it tilts the playing field towards Republicans when it comes to redistricting advantage. Trump aims to oust FDA head. Washington. President Trump has signed off on a plan to fire Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Marty Makary, according to people familiar with the matter, following a tumultuous period for the regulator that included clashes over vaping, abortion, and drug policy. Makary, a former Johns Hopkins surgeon who became a frequent Make America Healthy Again surrogate on television news programs, is seen by other top administration leaders as struggling to manage his agency, sparring frequent with health department officials and at times the White House. His tenure has also been dogged by the after effects of DOJ-led layoffs and rapid turnover in the FDA's leadership ranks. He would become the latest top lieutenant fired under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. since the ouster of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Susan Menarez last summer and the February removal of HHS Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill. Trump's plan isn't yet final and could change. President Trump has assembled what can be considered the most experienced and talented administration in history, an administration that continues to focus on delivering more historic victories for the American people, said White House spokesman Kush Desai. Makary didn't respond to a request for comment. Top administration officials have become increasingly convinced Makary has to go because, in addition to months of turmoil, complaints from some in the pharmaceutical industry continued to mount, people familiar with the matter said. Kennedy last year had considered installing someone else to run the FDA, while McCarry remained a figurehead. Trump recently became frustrated with McCarry for not moving fast enough to approve flavored vapes and other nicotine products. McCarry, in February, refused to authorize blueberry and mango vape flavors from Los Angeles manufacturer Glass, worried that fruit flavors would encourage youth vaping. After the pressure from Trump, he reversed course and authorized the flavors. McCarry has also run into criticism from biotech companies with rare disease drugs, as well as patients and their advocates. I supported this nomination because he spoke truth during COVID, rare disease advocate and former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum said of McCarry on social media recently. He immediately fired the best leaders at the FDA, replaced them with anti-Trump leftists who hollowed out FDA, harmed patients, stifled innovation, and drove biotech to China, then lied about it. Marjorie Danon-Felser, the influential president of anti-abortion group Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, recently renewed her call for McCarry to be fired. The Wall Street Journal reported that McCarry said he could have stalled approval of a generic form of the abortion pill, but didn't. McCarry rose in conservative circles as a measured critic of pandemic-era health efforts and the failings of the traditional medical establishment. In September of 2024, he joined Kennedy and other health influencers, including former Surgeon General nominee Dr. Casey Means, for a Senate panel on nutrition, marking the start of McCarry's public alliance with the MAHA movement. Trump tapped McCarry for the FDA post in November of 2024, as Kennedy and other health department leaders bonded in meetings at Dr. Mehmet Oz's oceanfront Florida mansion. Kennedy described McCarry, along with Oz and National Institutes of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya, as friends who stayed in each other's homes and vacationed together in a Fox News interview last year. But McCarry has battled with others in the health department on a range of policy issues, people familiar with the matter said. And he has increasingly relied on a smaller inner circle of advisors as he searched for wins he could tout to the White House and the press, some of the people familiar with the matter said. Rupert Murdoch blitzes the NFL. Fox founder lobbies for broadcasters as streamers encroach. The National Football League was already by far the richest game in town, but it wanted more. The league was angling to reopen existing media deals, potentially giving deep-pocketed streamers a chance to make even more inroads into America's most popular sport. Murdoch's Fox Network, the smallest of the NFL partners, would have to pay up or risk losing its whole franchise to the likes of Amazon and YouTube. At the dinner, Murdoch warned Trump that if streamers gained rights to more games, it would kill broadcast networks, a person familiar with the evening's events said. Trump listened to the concerns and asked questions about the business, the person said. It was a bold play call, even for a media titan known for making them. Fox's fear of losing games created a highly unusual situation where Murdoch was seeking to stir up trouble for a partner it pays billions, fraying a relationship that has lasted for decades. Last month, the Justice Department opened an investigation into whether sports leagues, the NFL most prominent among them, should continue to enjoy antitrust protections under the 1961 Sports Broadcasting Act, which allows them to collectively negotiate television rights on behalf of teams. Details of the probe couldn't be learned, and a person familiar with the matter said it is unlikely to result in a DOJ lawsuit against any of the leagues. The department declined to comment. Still, the added scrutiny could embolden broadcasters to hold their ground when the NFL comes knocking. It could also turn into a political hot potato for the league if Congress decides to reconsider the SBA. After all, what football fan would disagree with a bill to make games more accessible? You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Huge ratings. Murdoch's Gambit underscores the stakes not only for Fox but also for other major media players. The NFL is the most watched content on American broadcast television. It provides huge ratings to networks that are generally suffering from viewership declines as traditional media teeters, cord cutting continues, and subscription streaming services nab a growing amount of U.S. TV viewership. In the swamp that is entertainment, said former Fox Sports chairman David Hill, the only solid ground is sports. The league has launched a political blitz of its own. Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles in April, according to people with knowledge of the call. He expressed concerns over the new investigation and said the league was happy to show that its media model is the fairest among major sports leagues, one of these people said. Trump has also spoken to New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft in recent weeks, a senior White House official said. The NFL has consistently touted its approach to media as the most fan-friendly in sports. Last season, the league said 87% of games were available on broadcast networks, and matchups are aired on local TV in teams' home markets, even if they also appear on paid streaming services. That's something that's been the core of our success, Goodell said ahead of the Super Bowl, and will continue to be my view. The National Association of Broadcasters, which lobbies on behalf of networks including Fox, questioned that figure, saying it does not describe what a typical fan can watch on local channels in their own market. In many respects, NFL fans are better served than when President John F. Kennedy signed the SBA into law. Back then, viewers could watch only their home team on local TV. Now, if they're willing to pay the price for products such as YouTube's Sunday Ticket, they can stream every single Sunday afternoon game. And unlike leagues such as MLB and the NBA, where the majority of games air on cable via regional sports networks, the NFL says most of its games are available on free over-the-air channels. But the balance of economic power has shifted as well. When the SBA was enacted, streaming services didn't exist, and the NFL was still something of a second-tier sport at the mercy of broadcast networks. Being allowed to negotiate on behalf of all teams protected small market franchises. Now the roles have reversed. The NFL is all-powerful and the broadcast TV is waning. Critics say the league is using an antitrust exemption made to benefit public broadcasters to negotiate lucrative streaming deals. The broadcast networks, particularly Fox and CBS, are also frustrated because even as NFL games get spread out among more outlets, their price tag keeps going up. The Sunday afternoon packages for Fox and CBS have been diluted over the years by games moving to streaming and other days of the week. Fox has also argued that if the cost of sports continues to rise, it will harm its ability to serve the public with local news and other programming. Murdoch and his top executives have sought many avenues to make their case. White House officials said they had heard about the issue from several of Murdoch's lieutenants across his empire. Murdoch is chairman emeritus of both Fox and News Corp, parent of the Wall Street Journal. Lawyers for Fox wrote in a recent letter to the FCC that if more live sports moved to paywalled streaming services, it could have devastating consequences for consumers and broadcast stations alike. Local stations also expressed concern about sports moving to streaming in a meeting with Justice Department officials at a TV industry convention last month. Charlie Beller, Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department's Antitrust Division, and the division's Chief of Staff, Sarah Matar, listened to a range of complaints from the broadcasters. Fox disrupted the status quo in 1993 when it beat out CBS for the rights to air the NFL, leaving its rival without games for the first time in decades. The NFL put Fox on the map and allowed it to get stronger distribution and greater ad revenue. As its rivals embraced the streaming era and sought to get bigger, Fox took the opposite approach. After a failed attempt to acquire what was then Time Warner, Murdoch sold most of the company's entertainment assets to Disney for $71.3 billion in 2019. That left it more dependent on the NFL than its rivals. The company focused primarily on news and sports, protecting the current ecosystem rather than investing billions into streaming. It owns the ad-supported streaming platform Tubi and has launched the subscription services Fox One, which repackages feeds from its broadcast and cable outlets. Fox Nation, an on-demand subscription service, carries Fox News content and original programming. The NFL, meanwhile, has capitalized on a media landscape that Goodell has said is changing dramatically. The $110 billion in rights deals the NFL forged in 2021 with Amazon, CBS, ESPN, Fox, and NBC represented a windfall. Thursday Night Football moved from Fox to Amazon exclusively, and Goodell said the shift from broadcast to streaming dramatically lowered the average age of the viewing audience. And despite Fox's recent alarmism about streaming, it opted to give up Thursday Night Football, clearing the way for Amazon to get the rights. It even pulled out of its deal a year early. Netflix aired its first game in 2024, part of what Goodell has called a push to meet fans where they are. These days, that's less and less on traditional television networks. The PACs brought in a huge increase in revenue for the league through 2033 and included opt-outs after the 2029 season. Despite the scale, league insiders began to feel it wasn't enough. So when the National Basketball Association signed its own collection of record deals in 2024, more than doubling the fees the league receives per season, the NFL wanted more, people familiar with its thinking said. NFL owners and executives saw their own soaring ratings relative to basketball and other sports and shared the same thought: we're way underpaid. The league didn't have a mechanism to go back to the bargaining table, but an opportunity would soon arise. Skydance's Paramount merger, which closed last year, triggered a change of control clause in the NFL's contract with CBS that gave it the option to renegotiate. CBS currently pays about $2.1 billion annually for its Sunday package, and the league is seeking an increase of at least 50%, according to people familiar with the matter. The NFL, which owns stakes in CBS parent Paramount and Disney's ESPN, is betting that it can use that renegotiation to bring other media partners back to the table. It has told some broadcast partners it would remove the 2029 opt out clause if they are willing to pay more now, people familiar with those discussions said. Those who don't extend could see the league pursue other partners after 2029. Networks with multi-year deals in hand have bristled at the move. They want the league to extend the deals beyond the current 2034 end date if they're going to pay more, said people familiar with their thinking. With more companies such as Netflix showing an interest in buying rights to stream more games, the league could credibly threaten that if the others aren't willing to renegotiate, packages of games could be sold elsewhere by the time the opt-outs arrive. The Justice Department's probe puts the new reality of entertainment in the spotlight. Sports fans and consumers now subscribe to a multitude of streaming services, which led to a fragmented viewing experience compared with cable bundles. Viewing access and affordability issues have galvanized some conservative lawmakers and consumer advocates. Watching a season of your favorite NFL team has turned into a $1,000 a year scavenger hunt, said Grant Spellmeyer, President and CEO of America's Communications Association. It is not only unfair to sports fans, but also to pay TV subscribers everywhere who are forced to subsidize excessive league fees. The banker behind the sexual assault lawsuit captivating Wall Street. It seemed like everyone at 270 Park Avenue was talking about Shirayu Rana. The 35-year-old banker was about 6 months off J.P. Morgan Chase's payroll when he filed a lawsuit against the bank and his former coworker, alleging a pattern of sexual assault and harassment. The details were salacious and shocking to his peers, who'd known him as a socially awkward, occasionally gruff finance bro. J.P. Morgan hired Rana in 2024 to help build its business in the booming private credit industry. The banker, who'd cut his teeth at Credit Suisse and Morgan Stanley, quickly got to work at the bank's office on Park Avenue, landing new deals for J.P. Morgan. He could be critical of his teammates, former colleagues said, but he was effective at bringing in new business. Now, he was bringing wild-sounding allegations against his former coworker, Lorna Hajdini, a rising star at J.P. Morgan. Through a bank spokesperson, Hajdini's lawyers have categorically denied the allegations and said the two never had sexual relations. J.P. Morgan is standing by Hajdini. A bank spokesman said it doesn't believe there's any merit to Rana's claims following an internal investigation. Rana had filed the lawsuit on April 27th under the pseudonym John Doe. It was later taken off the court docket, fueling questions about its credibility. Online, people quoted the filing's eye-popping phrases that he alleged Hajdini had said, including, "I bet your little Asian fishhead wife doesn't have these cannons," and "never forget, I effing own you." On Monday, Rana refiled the lawsuit in New York State Court, with his lawyer attributing the week-long takedown to a clerical error. The lawsuit is substantially the same. It includes 2 sworn affidavits from witnesses whose names are redacted, and who say they saw Hajdini inappropriately touch Rana. The Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday that J.P. Morgan offered Rana a $1 million settlement to make his complaint go away. He chose to go public. This scandal had the right bits of sex, power, and money to turn two mid level Wall Street workers into objects of internet fascination. The lawsuit's tawdry and explicit details became a script for AI generated videos and sexually suggestive memes featuring Pepe the Frog. Key details that spread weren't accurate. He was having an affair, Rana is unmarried. He retracted his lawsuit, not quite, it was refiled. She was his supervisor, she wasn't. The social media circus and competing narratives about the case have made it difficult to tell what's real and what isn't. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. One thing for certain is that America's biggest bank has an unlikely public relations crisis on its hand, and Rana is at the heart of it. We look forward to the truth and facts coming to light through court proceedings, said Daniel Kaiser, an attorney for Rana. Whether my client's civil rights were violated will be determined in a court of law. From a young age, Rana was determined to win. He spent his teenage years in Vienna, Virginia, a wealthy suburb of Washington, D.C., the firstborn of the Nepalese immigrants. His mother ran a licensed daycare out of their home, a $1.24 million five-bedroom house on a leafy cul-de-sac. He played soccer and went to Bishop Dennis J. O'Connell High School, a Catholic preparatory school in Arlington. After graduation, Rana enrolled in Marymount University in 2008, where he was on the men's soccer team. He transferred the following year to Rutgers University, Newark, where he continued to play soccer as a midfielder and graduated in January of 2013. One former Rutgers Newark teammate remembered Rana as a good, reliable player, but said he could sometimes be aggressive during practice, getting into disagreements with other seniors on the team for excessive tackling or jostling with teammates for control of the ball. Rana's Rutgers Newark team roster page shows that he didn't get a lot of gameplay. Those who met Rana in college remembered him as driven and ambitious, saying he talked often about hunting for internships and applying for jobs. One former teammate recalled a time where Rana reached out to the father of another teammate who worked at a major law firm, asking if he could secure a summer internship. Early in his career, Rana cycled through prestigious financial firms, including Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley, Carlyle Group, and an affiliate of Apollo Global Management. In a 2019 corporate sustainability report from Carlyle, Rana was featured as a mentee of a senior black executive under a subsection called Leading by Example in ESG Practices. He switched jobs frequently in the last 5 years, after he wasn't extended a return offer to Carlyle's once a 2-year program he worked in concluded in 2020, a person familiar with the matter said. He had a stint at a consultancy called Cross Boundary between 2020 and 2022 that wasn't included in his employment history with the U.S. regulators. When Rana worked at Cross Boundary, he yelled at coworkers after they tried to offer constructive criticism about his performance, people familiar with the matter said. Rana was transitioned out of the company in February 2022, in part because of his demeanor in the workplace, the people said. Kaiser, Rana's attorney, said, "We categorically reject these false claims and another attempt to smear my client in the press." He went on to work for Morgan Stanley for around 1.5 years and then an affiliate of Apollo for 6 months. A person close to Apollo said he was managed out of the role after managers felt he wasn't a good fit. Kaiser said this wasn't true. Rana arrived at JP Morgan in March of 2024, where he was brought on to help build out JP Morgan's private credit business. The bank has ramped up efforts to edge into this hot corner of Wall Street, where Rana had experience from his stints at Carlyle and Morgan Stanley. He worked on developing the bank's leading practices for software companies and helped originate one of the bank's first private loans based on the borrower's annual revenue, a type of lending that is often considered high risk. From the get-go, Rana showed a willingness to tell colleagues that they were making mistakes and their work wasn't up to standard, people familiar with the matter said. He worked regularly with Lorna Hejdini, who was on his team. Hejdini has been seen as a model employee inside JP Morgan and has been a part of some of the bank's initiatives to encourage women to pursue long-term careers in finance. She moved from a role inside the commercial bank to a more prestigious one inside the investment bank, bridging a cultural divide inside the company that CEO Jamie Dimon has long been focused on. Outside of work, Rana Hejdini and other team members regularly communicated with each other in group texts and would sometimes go out together, according to screenshots of text messages reviewed by the journal. On occasion, coworkers would joke about Rana's Nepalese background in the chats or refer to Indian men as brown boys, according to the screenshots. Rana liked one message where a colleague asked if a brown boy could join a gathering, one screenshot shows. The brown boy, in reference, was the colleague's boyfriend whom Rana knew, a person familiar with the matter said. Rana and Hejdini also exchanged seemingly friendly text messages, with Hejdini sending him SoundCloud links and memes, the screenshots show. In his lawsuit, Rana alleged that Hejdini first made advances on him beginning around May 2024. He claims that he went to see a senior team leader in Greenwich, Connecticut, and asked that they not be put on further assignments together. He then claimed that Hejdini assaulted him several times and drugged him. Two witnesses said in sworn affidavits that they saw Hejdini inappropriately interact with Rana, and one of them said Hejdini asked him to join a threesome with her and Rana. The identities of the witnesses have been redacted in the court filings. Through a JP Morgan spokesman, Hejdini's lawyers have denied that she ever had sexual relations with Rana, and said his false claims are entirely fabricated. Rana stopped coming to the office at the end of 2024 and told the bank that his father had died, even though his biological father had not, according to a person close to JP Morgan. Kaiser, Rana's lawyer, said that he was referring to a dad-like figure who helped raise him and whom Kaiser didn't identify by name. Hejdini and other JP Morgan teammates sent Rana flowers, believing that his biological father had died, the person familiar said. According to the lawsuit, Rana also began looking for another job but didn't get any offers. In May 2025, he filed a formal internal complaint alleging sexual assault and race-based harassment with JP Morgan. His representative requested that JP Morgan settle the claims for approximately $22 million, people familiar with the matter said. Rana was put on paid leave while the bank tried to mediate the claims with him, later offering him $1 million to settle them. Rana left JP Morgan at the end of 2025 and joined Briegel Sagemount, a private equity firm. He filed a discrimination complaint against JP Morgan with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission at the end of March, the journal has reported. His employment at Briegel was terminated in the beginning of April of this year, a company spokeswoman said. In a bygone era, Rana's lawsuit and the $1 million settlement offer from JP Morgan that preceded the filing might have flown under the radar. But since the filing went public, Rana and his lurid allegations against his former colleague have become the subject of intense public speculation. AI generated videos and images of Rana and Hejdini on dinner dates and canoodling in an office have circulated on social media. Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, and even Martin Shkreli, the businessman who was convicted for securities fraud in 2017 and released from prison in 2022, have opined about what really happened. People claiming to know Rana from schoolwork and dating in New York swap stories at the online water cooler. Inside JP Morgan's headquarters in Manhattan, banking teams swapped memes and traded stories of working with him. Employees were shocked to hear Hejdini, the star employee, accused of sexual assault. The group chats of Rana's former Rutgers team also lit up, former teammates said. One longtime friend was surprised by reports characterizing Rana as a gauche underperformer, having known Rana as an outgoing person with a dry, quick sense of humor and an intense work ethic. This week, prediction markets popped up on Polymarket, tracking the odds of various outcomes in Rana's case. Chirayu Rana Sood was sitting with a 77% chance likelihood on Friday morning, with about $147,134 in trading volume. A market betting on whether Rana would apologize for making his allegations had a 3% likelihood and a volume of $242,921 the same day. Polymarket has a data partnership with Dow Jones, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. Both sides are gearing up for the case to go to trial. A judge recently scheduled a preliminary hearing for May 26th. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 9th and 10th Sunday/Saturday issues of the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition. We read from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition every Monday at 7 a.m. Your reader has been Julian Wong. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings, 24 hours a day, of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has broadcast almost 40 years of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading